the session. Okay, the recording has been started. So hi once again, the sound is okay, the screen is visible, so everything looks great. Okay then, so that's another week passed on our Angular course. So this time around, you should already touch such new topics like module services and routing in terms of theoretical knowledge and in terms of the practical task this week, if I'm not mistaken, you need to accommodate the task about components, directive, and pipes that touches the previous week. So as for the first home assignment, that was Angular intro, which is mostly about using ngCli to generate the empty component to recreate the project structure, as well as set up the ESLint with necessary rules. Well, honestly, I don't think it requires too much attention. Just want you to know that there is no wrong project structure, even in Angular. Even though Angular is more has like is the more strict in terms of project structure, still there is no wrong approach actually, and it could depend on many of the projects. So, in terms of like reviewing the other tasks, I believe we could touch it starting from the next week, but please let me know before we move on with the practical part whether you need to pay attention to the intro task or you have some other questions in terms of previous topics you want to cover. So I will give you a minute or two, so just to prepare with all of your questions in terms of previous projects or home assignments. In case if you have something, so please go ahead to ask either in chat or in the microphone. I will wait for a couple of minutes and then we could move forward with our practical part for today. Okay, meanwhile you're thinking, just I'm trying to guess how we're going to do the next times. So most likely we would like open the reveal the task reviews from the previous Angular course runs once the deadline has come, and then we would ask for preparing the questions to the workshop. So I believe that should work. In any way, just don't take it to your mind. I will leave you the follow up after the workshop. So um, okay, since no topics to cover right now, I would propose you to proceed with the other ones. It Anyway, you leave any of the questions, stop me at any moment, as usual. In case if you have any comments or questions or something is not clear, I believe we are good to go. So last time, if you remember, we've created a simple version of Momentum written on Angular using Angular material components, and it has a pretty simple functionality. So first, it's prompts for a user to enter the name, and based on that, it will print the personal and time-based greeting, as well as a simple to-do list that show us uh, the activities we need to focus for the upcoming days. So just in case if you haven't seen the previous part, just let's quickly see on which parts it consists. So the first thing is the input that awaits our name. After we submitting the name, it's print as the greeting along with the time and the simple to-do list that could hold our things to do, as well as marking the status. Even though if we update the current page, it will take the latest value from the local storage, that's our name, and everything works the same. So in terms of our project structure, so okay, maybe I do believe that maybe for someone it could not be visible, so maybe let's switch to the light theme. I hope it should be much better in terms of recording, but okay. Great. So our project consists of several components. First, awaits for input. The second one is our personal greeting, and the third one consists of the to-do list. Since we will be touching three of the topics, it's module, services, and routine, I propose to kickstart with modules. So if you remember, there are several types of modules in Angular. First one is core module, which could be or also generated pretty simple in a pretty simple way. So maybe since I'm not sure how to make the terminal font quite bigger, so maybe I will use not the built-in one, but the external. So it's quite simple. It's the same as GCLI command. So, and there are several types of modules. I'll cover only main of them. So first is core. What is the core module? So I believe this topic was already covered. Is the module that's mostly intended to hold infrastructural things like global services, infrastructure modules related to infrastructure as well as logic. So if we look at our application in terms of what can be moved to the core module, so seems like we already leave the to-do from the past time to move some piece of logic to service. Okay, so perhaps you already got acquainted with what the service is and the as well as the idea about dependency injection. Well, I will not get too deeper into theory this time around, so I believe you all already had a look at the all the materials. We'll just focus on the practical part. So in such case, we need in our core module a new service. So let's see what logic we have here. So we have something related to saving and getting a user from the local storage, right? Okay, so let's simply name it as the user service and we're good to go. So here's our newly generated core module. So maybe just to finalize our preliminary refactoring, I would propose to do something like the following. I would also create shared module. So I hope that you got the difference. I'm sorry. I hope you got the difference between core and shared module. Core module will be imported only once in the app module. So here we will import our core module. Preliminary, it could consist, in case if you don't want to see many of the imports in the app module, just like you implement the regular code, for example, right? So, uh, for instance, if we took as the ng on init, even though we have some logic here, for me, it's not quite obvious what's going on here. So most likely I will do something like the following. So it's something that gets the saved user, right? So I would rather having ng on init that invokes a set of functions, which is much more clear for me what we're trying to achieve within the lifecycle hook. And that's a quite good recommendation also for you. Whenever you encounter the entry point, try to keep it as simple as possible. So ideally, ng on init will consist of a set of invocation, right? So invoke one function, then second, third one, and so on. So try to keep all the lifecycle hooks, all the entry points as simple as it possible, since it would be easier for you or for us, a developer, to figure out what's going on here. The same approach could be applied to modules, right? So we can use core module to move out some imports out of here. For example, forms module, in case if it will be used everywhere. So most likely we could move it as well. As well, we could move material related modules to somewhere else. Because why not? We want to keep up modules simple. Well, we stopped by creation of the modules, right? So we've already created core and shared. Core module, as we already got here, it consists of some infrastructural files like global services. If you already touched the topic about root, and you also know about guard, which is also a service. Um, so if those guards are also shared, it also will be a good choice to store them in the core module. And as well, in case if you build some global layout, let's say, on the app component, so it's also okay to store such components inside the core module. So maybe, perhaps, before we move further, because it's quite complex to find out and to move it all at once. So now to proceed, we require to start creation of the new entities. First, maybe let's focus on the services, which will allow us to simplify the logic a bit. And then we could focus on creation of the routing modules uh, of several routes. As you see, the main difference, let's say the condition we have here. So initially, our application shows us only the user input. So whenever we entered some name, it show up another screen. And now it's implemented in the form of a single component, which is in the Angular world, it's not quite correct. So let's have the separate modules, feature modules or routes for these two screens. And instead of having ng if condition, we will implement guard. So our focus for today is to refactor a bit our project to partition it by commonly used Angular modules and see how can we simplify it, as well as we'll use some of the routine features. Okay, got it. So maybe let's focus on the service. We already created the user service. Um, to move the logic that is related to uh, user saving and getting the value into a single service. Okay. Um, okay. We could just directly move everything that is relative to user right to the service. Could use also reuse the local storage name, username submitted. So perhaps we will not need it here. Current name. Okay, let's try to keep current name as well. Okay, that should be enough. So service is also a class, right? However, it uses another decorator called injectable, which means that this class could participate in dependency injection. So what's the DI is in a few words, I just am trying to recall any parts that we already implemented, so perhaps it's already exist, but I barely recall something. Maybe we already did some DI last time. Seems like no. Okay. Don't worry, we will do it anyway. So I believe that should be enough. Inside of the injectable decorator, you by default you'll see the property called provided in. By default, the value is root. So what's provided in is maybe perhaps you know that the regular ng module has the array called providers, which exactly is all about services. And some time ago, to provide a service, to register, let's say to register a service within a particular scope, we need to pass the name to providers, right? So if we want to register our service, we need to pass this to the providers array, right? However, the more preferable way to do so, and that's actually it's already done by using the property provided in. It accepts two values, if we will see. Actually, we could refer to the documentation right here. So, and we will see that it accepts some of the other types rather than root. It could accept such strings at any platform, but in the most cases, just not to get too deeper, we assume that it could accept two values. First is root, and second one, in case if you want these particular servers to be available only within a single module, then you need to pass the module reference right here. And in that case, it will be available only within the core module. Okay, we will leave root just because every service that is located inside the core module is global. So that's why we wanted to keep it as this. So now we moved the user related logic out of the app component. Okay, so perhaps we could refactor a bit. Okay, so since get saved user, we need to store it somehow. Get saved user. Okay, so perhaps we want to modify it a bit. Okay, saved name, it's now not undefined. Okay, and then Okay, why not? Let's do it as the following. Local variable safe name is redundant. Okay, why not? Um, since we're dealing with the string and do not want to deal with types coercion, so probably let's do the following. So we can leave it as is. Great. Now let's try to use it within app component. First, we want to remove everything that we moved out of the component to a service. And since we're dealing with the current name, so perhaps instead of having this flag, no, we still need those, uh, method, but instead of having the logic, we will call out the service. Okay, in case if current user is not the empty string, then it will display this action. And now to use our service, we need create constructor. And then if you remember from the TypeScript basics, so by default, whenever you pass some property, let's say to a constructor, you all might do something like the following. So constructor takes number of properties, and then to save it to your state, you use the following, right? So the shorthand for such um, uh, a code, so by using the access modifier, either public or private, and whenever you do something like the following, it will automatically assign this property to your class as well. And the same mechanism is for injecting our dependencies. So actually, we implemented the dependency injection right here. The cool thing is dependency injection works in the following way. So instead of creation of the new instance of the user service class, instead it will get the already existing instance of the same service. So that's called a singleton. Which means that a service, an Angular service, could be used also for state management, for simple state management. We'll also cover the NGRX and Redux concepts a bit later. But in most of the cases, you might want to use a service in case if you have some global state you want to share across all the parts, and you want to ensure that the same state of a particular service will be available for every part. So right now, we want to get the saved user from the service. We can also remove it right here. And we want to call out the service and submit the name, right? Something like the following. Let's see whether it works. Well, it still gets the data from the local storage, and it still is able to submit the data. So we see nothing changed in terms of functionality, but now our entry component a bit cleaner, and we consolidated the user related logic in one place, in the user service, which exactly deals with the user logic. So it's the only responsibility that user service has, and that's great. Okay, so we'll also create a bunch of other services. Um, let's focus on creation of other modules and other routes. Since we're dealing with routing, we already agreed that we will have two pages. First, we'll prompt the username, and second one will show the greeting with the rest stuff. So if you remember the types of modules, so maybe we'll have some the listing just to refresh in the memory. So yeah, as I mentioned, maybe I also want like to see in the documentation itself. So actually, it could be much more than just three types of modules. But at the same time, um, as we got from the very first response, we will have at least in the current application, the three types of modules. First is core module we already created, shared module, and the feature modules. So shared module, what is all about? It's about having shared directives, pipes, and shared components across the application. So if we assume that the directive and the pipe we created last time will be reused somewhere else, um, most likely we want to move it to the shared module as well. But I see task completed is mostly related to the to-do item. So that's why maybe it's only related to to-do, will not move it. Time greeting, well, it also relates to only one component, but just to demonstrate how is it going. So we could move all this stuff to the shared module. And we will see, oops, not directives. And I also, if you see, I wanted to move models. So one more time, core module is all that's related to services and infrastructure. And share module is all about having shared directives, components, pipes, and also it could consist of shared models or TypeScript interfaces that is related to the business requirements, right? So our to-do item is our business entity, right? So that's why we want to keep in such models inside the shared module. Um, okay, so since we're dealing, so this is the constant and its components. So, okay, wait to store constant. So it also depends on the module. So since this constant is relative to showing the to do items and it will be removed, so let's not making any differences here. Okay, directive pipes. So first of all, we want to see shared module as well, right here. And since we moved the declarations of pipe and directive out of the module, let's see, time greeting pipe, we'll remove it from here as well, the task completed directive. Let's see. Um, if I want to implement loader during request, where I should store is loading boolean in the ngrx store, in the service related or shared module, or in the component itself. So Definitely not in the component. So yeah, it's mostly depends on several factors. So first of all, whether you use state management to your application. Uh, if you use the store, if you already use NGRX, I would say it's the most preferable way to use is your store since it's already implemented. In case if you don't have the Redux or any other state management in your app, so the service could deal with it as well. The component just to reflect to the latest changes. So yeah, it definitely needs to take the flag that's the application now is loading just to show up the components, right? But still, the source of truth will be either service or your store. Okay, so we removed the declarations out of the app module, and we have directive and pipe. So let's add it to the declarations right here. Task complete directive and time greeting pipe. And don't forget to have exports array. Why so? Whenever you import the shared module to some other ones, it will look at the exports array. And whenever is whatever stated here will be available in the scope of the same module. So if we don't add the exports array here, it will end up with error. Okay, now let's see whether everything works as it previously. Okay, so looks like it's nothing changed. So yeah, by the way, directive and pipes, it's something that is by default used as some shared functionality, right? Because directive, if you remember, is a class, a TypeScript class that deals with the template. It has the same lifecycle hooks as the components, but at the same time, it doesn't have its own template. But so that's something that will be reused definitely, as well as pipes. So that's why we created them as the separate entities and move it to shared as well. Okay, so we see right now the structure is a bit simplified. Uh, the only things we have left here is two folders, components and constants. So yeah, definitely the component okay, we'll work on the component part. So right now we created two modules, core and shared. Just to memorize, shared module is also known as widget module. In case if it will make sense for you, it means having shared components, shared visuals, or shared models that represents the data. And core model is more about services and infrastructure. We'll definitely create something else in addition. Okay, so let's maybe start creating our routing rules. When I was preparing for the forward today's call, so I missed that now starting from some version, um, we could easily create any of the lazy loaded modules right here without adding them manually. We can simply use the ngCli command. So let's try to do so. So first of all, we would require the root. That will wait for our username to be typed into the input. So let's call it as not welcome by user input, or I don't know, anonymous. Okay, let's be welcome. Module welcome, root. This is what that will be our path name, and then we specify where is the entry point. Okay, so let's see what it will result in. So it's created the welcome module as well as the routing module for that part. So let's see what we have inside the welcome module. We have entry component. So this is our entry component. With the entry module with the one component. And what changes we have here? So since we specified the path and the fact that the module will be the feature one, it's automatically created the new entry inside the app routing module. So whenever we will encounter the welcome route, it will load this module, and depending on the rules stated in the welcome routing module, it will take us and show the particular component. So the cool thing with the lazy modules is that you are not loading the Angular app all at once. You load the different parts that are needed right now for your app. And whenever you encounter some other parts, you will load those modules additionally. So we created the welcome route. So maybe let's create another one. And that will be our last route. It will be greeting. And it will create the same module for us. Okay, seems like we already have the listing of the routes that will be used for our app. A couple of other things perhaps we need here is whenever we typed just our host name without any pass, we need to redirect them directly to the welcome page. So to do so, we need another entry. It will be empty string. Then we'll redirect to welcome. And since we haven't specified the component, it requires a parameter called pass match. Since we're dealing with just a simple redirection, we'll specify full. The only beware here, just want to focus on this thing, is that this listing of rules has the priority. The router mechanism will go from up to down, comparing whether your current path meets the criteria, right? Oh, so and let's say let's imagine the such thing. Whenever we inputted some paths that will match the first and the second object, it will choose the first one just because it stays at the first place, so it has the top priority. So that's why having such generic rules like this one or even this one, which means any route, because in case if we place it right here, so usually this rule is used for redirecting to the page not found. In case if you put this rule at the top, all the rest ones will not be available just because any route will match with the first one. So that's why such generic rules needs to be put at the very bottom, because you could encounter some error when your routing is not working just because your first route or the second one matches all the routes that you input in your browser. Okay, we could check the URL, and as you can see, I haven't typed anything. It takes us to welcome. Okay, so we dealt with the URLs, so let's now focus on the implementation itself. So the content wrapper is something that will be quite generic. So the cool thing is Angular is the single page application framework. What does it actually mean? So if we compare two approaches, it's MPA and SPA. So at a free time, you could refer to such terms. What does it mean? So just in case, multi-page application means that whenever you click the links on the website, it reloads the entire page each time, right? For me, maybe it will be quite difficult to find the uh, the example for you, but okay, why not? Let's try it out. And let's see. Okay, so whenever we load the page, and when we see in the response the rendered HTML, so what it will indicate us? So first is that this page is rendered by server, which is status SSR, so it's SSR enabled, and most likely whenever we'll click other links, you will notice that it reloads the entire tab to display you another page. At the same time, if we look at the Angular IO, so the main part that's show us the documentation, we will see that the body itself, the content, or even though the HTML, which is the entry point, is empty, but at the same time, we see the content, right? Each time we encounter some of the page, we're not refreshing the entire app. Instead, we load the content dynamically. And that's the coolest part. So in our case, we're having some element that makes the layout center aligned, and most likely we want to keep it as is. And inside of this wrapper, we want to insert all the content that comes with the routine. So to do so, we need the router outlet tag, and we need moving all this stuff to the separate modules. Okay, so just for the demo purpose, we could for now stick with the empty components that are already created, since we're not having multiple pages, but at the same time, we will think on how can we improve it. So first, we need user input out of here to the welcome module. So where do we have? Okay, so no, looks like we still need some improvements here. And here's my recommendation. What can we do? We will need inside of feature modules, we'll need two extra directories, pages and components. Pages will represent the Angular components that are used to represent the layout for the current route, and the components will represent the particular part of the page. To do so, maybe let's move this newly generated component right here. That will be our welcome page. And to represent that this component represents the page, I also do like the following. I name this as page component. Okay. This will be welcome page. Okay, the naming convention. Just to represent that this component is not a regular one, it's the page. And the user input will go here. Then we need to move the part with the user input out of the app component and place it into the welcome page right here. But first we need to ensure that this particular component has been imported, or to be more precisely declared. To do so, we will take it out. So let's see, welcome module, routine, sorry, not routine, the model itself. We need user input here. Okay, so now it needs to submit username. And save username actually saves the user in the service. Okay, what we need to do to copy this stuff right here. We provide the user service in the welcome page. On init right now is redundant. Let's remove it right away. Okay, so whenever we encounter the welcome page, it should save the user and take us to the next route. So if you remember the lecture about routing, there are two ways. How can we organize? Okay, let's do the following. How can we organize the navigation? There are two ways. So first, either by having a link with the property called router link. And here we can specify the link we want to take us. So let's say we have greeting. And by clicking the link, we'll get redirected to the greeting route. Now let's see. We need to remove the component out of here. Not form field. I know what does it mean. It means that the current module lacks of the material modules. So personally, what I want to use, instead of like having one big module with all the material stuff, I would rather doing like the following. I would rather importing only necessary things inside the module. Just because not everywhere you need the material input or checkboxes. So that's why, and also material button. Yes, yeah, exactly. Yes, and when we click the link, we'll get redirected to the greeting. But we want to be taken there not by clicking a separate link, but by programmatically whenever we saved our user in local storage. So that's why, apart from the user service, we need this stuff called router. And then, upon saving the username in the service, we could get navigated to the greeting. Okay, great. Let's see. We are getting to the greeting. Great. Let's move everything that is relative to the greeting to our newly created module. In the same way, we are going to have components and pages, because a feature module can consist of different pages as well. So let's move this newly created component into pages right here. And I would also rename it to the greeting page. Yeah. Okay, and we need to move everything that is related to the greeting page inside the feature module. Or we could already created the directory, but we could simply move the component stuff right here. And what we need to do, greeting and to-do list component already moved out of the app module. So we will need to declare this kind of stuff here. If I'm not mistaken, what button, card, checkbox, and perhaps we could move this stuff right here to remove from here. Okay, so now we more or less moved almost everything out of the app module as well as the app component. They're going to move stuff here. Okay, so first we see that it depends on the currently entered name. So we need to ensure that we did receive this current name, right? So we do not need submitting user anymore. And we want to move everything that is relative to the current name here. Okay, let's see what errors we have. Not by found this time greeting. Okay, we know what's going on here. That's just because we moved every directive and pipe out of the module and place it into the shared one. So that's why we need to import this as well. Okay, so now we have the same stuff. So if we enter the other name upon submitting, we will get to the next route with the newly entered name. Okay, and what else do we have here? Greeting core and constants. So constants, I would rather move into the greeting thing. Uh, and now if we take a closer look what we have in our entry points, we will see that the app module is quite this much more simplified. It has only such dependencies that is used for initialization. Uh, Also, most likely we don't need shared module here. We could easily remove it. And you see, it consists of browser module, browser animation module, which loads with along with Angular material, the routine module, and core module, which is intended to import it only once inside the app module. And so our component is two-way simple. Or even though we could remove everything from here, since it doesn't consist of any logic. And as you can see, it's much more simpler. So ideally, app components should not consist of any of the logic. It should be as simple as possible and is used only for defining the global layout. So what do I mean? Apart from having the component wrap right here, so most likely you want to see header here, footer, and any other elements that will be available globally. And the question is where to store these two components, right? Ideally, the folders that's allocated right after navigating to the app is the modules. So all these directories represent modules, either core, shared, or feature ones. So if you want to store the components that are used only for the global layout, most likely you want to store such components in the core module. And here you will create, I will not generate these components via, or maybe we can do this, why not? Okay, let it be header and footer. Just for your reference and to demonstrate where it should be stored. Component matching footer element is out of the current module score. Okay, that sounds interesting. Just because I haven't I know what it is. Okay, that's actually just for your reference. Let's keep it as is. Okay, where we stop by. But by the way, please feel free to stop at any moment in case if you have any comments, so that's we could collaborate. Great. What else do we have? We have, so let's maybe first of all quickly recap what we have accommodated right now. So we created a bunch of modules, core, shared, and two feature modules that represents our roots. We created a service that is used for managing the user data. To get, if we want to create more, so even though we could create the service for managing the to-do list, by the way, we can do that. It's creating. So ideally to move this one out of the out of the component. So ideally, such logic should be stored somewhere else in the service. But I would rather prefer to keep as is for now. And in the future time, we will definitely need some state management mechanism. We'll also touch such topic as RxJS, which will allow us to react or subscribe to the changes. So for now, let's keep it as is, but and leave the to do for the future. Great. Um, okay, the only thing that is left, right? So even though we have the working logic, but whenever we clear the local storage, we will see that the greeting is empty. Uh, if I don't add the ng if there, it will result in error. And what if we want to ensure that whenever we navigate to the greeting page, the name already exists in the local storage, and only then allow us to navigate. And that's why guards come to the rescue. So the routing is quite awesome thing. Apart from having lazy loaded feature modules, it also has the feature called guards for such cases. Let's imagine you want to close some routes in case if a user lack of the roles or some data is missing. So that's why we can use guard. And the perfect place to create the guard will be core module. I usually create a separate folder called guards. Let's keep it as simple. It will be still user guard. And now it prompts me to select which of the methods I want to implement. So since this guard will be used for allowing us to enter and to load the lazy load module, so I would select two of them. It will result in creating a new guard. By default, we see that it has a full description of what it can accept or return. So it could return either some primitive or object or even asynchronous object as well. So let's imagine you're making the HTTP request for the current user and ensuring that a user has the permission to do some stuff. So that's why it's a cool thing. For now, for simplicity, we're strict to the following stuff. Our guard will be returning either Boolean or URL tree. Why so? So instead of uh, doing something like this router dot navigate, specifying the route, the most preferable way to do so uh, is to return URL tree. But to do so, we still need the dependency, the router one. Then we're preserving can activate and can load. If we don't include can activate, it will result in having loaded the feature module anyway. Of course, it will, this particular guard, if we don't include can activate, it will prevent us from navigating to that particular route, but at the same time, the module will be still loaded. So that's why I use two of them, can activate and can load. To reuse the logic, I will use the following method, and it will require our user service. Uh, yeah, do like the following: this user service get saved user, so it will be transformed to Boolean. If it's true, it will return Boolean. If not, we will return the URL tree. To do so, I use the following. The router has a method called parse URL, and we will pass this URL right here. Okay. And now we want to call this method in the guard. And now we're going back to uprooting module and specifying these newly created rules right here. To do so, we need the property called canActivate. It's the array to accept user guard, along with the canLoad. Since we agreed that's without canLoad, I'll leave the comment just in case. Okay, then let's check whether it works as intended. Okay, now we see once we cleared the local storage, it takes us to the welcome page. And let's check whether if we enter the name, once we enter it, it allows us to navigate further right to the greeting page. Okay, that's really great. Just a moment, I forgot something I wanted to show you as well. Whenever I was writing the user guard, well, for now, I believe that's probably should be enough. Maybe when I will be waiting for your questions for a couple of minutes, I will try to recall what I also wanted to implement. By the way, let's stop for a moment. I will wait for your questions or comments, in case if any, and then we can go further. So you can either unmute, speak to microphone, or to write in the chat by whatever means. So just a query for you, don't be silent in case if something is not clear. Okay, are you always have to folder out so much in Angular app project? Seems a lot for me. Well, perhaps didn't get your question. So could you please expand on what do you mean? Well, honestly, I don't recall what I wanted to implement as well. Anyway, if there are no any comments, we can stop. Or you could propose what else could we cover today. I believe we covered the minimum that is needed for getting started with the routes, the modules and services. But in case if you want something more, so please let me know. Okay, well, Maxim is like, I want you to expand a question because unfortunately I didn't get it. I will switch to the next one, so I would pause to expand the question. So next one, what is the difference between methods can activate and can load? I already told a couple of minutes ago. Uh, the the intention, or maybe just for your reference, uh, let's refer to the documentation. So this will be can activate routine tasks. I'll I just want to find in the reference just for you. It will be can load. Okay, there are actually several of them. Okay, can in any case can activate checks whether you can navigate to the road, and if we don't include can load here, it will result in the following. So first of all, just to demonstrate, in case if you still have some doubts, so what's the lazy loaded modules are. So let's see. Whenever we load something, we could inspect the scripts that have been loaded. We see we are on the greeting module, right? So, and we exactly loaded this particular module. So, or maybe better, let's navigate to welcome one. So you see it loads its particular module. If we enter name here, then get navigated, we will see that the greeting module has been loaded separately. So the main point is if I remove can load here, then clear the local storage, then we'll try to reload the page. We're seeing that the greeting module has been loaded, even though we do not have access to it. So there is no any point of loading the module to which we don't have access. So that's why we added the can load here. Can activate is used for any other cases when we want to describe the rule. Either we want to get further with the route or redirect somewhere else, depending on the condition. But for your reference, since we have this question, so yeah, exactly. I hope it's more clear now. Can load will or not load the lazy loaded module. At the same time, can activate is mostly used for the particular routes. Let's say can load is mostly used for the feature modules. Either the can activate is used for the particular routes where we use component property. So whenever we remove can activate, we see it still prevents us from loading greeting page. So in the particular case, we can leave just can load. So if you have load children and you need to define a generic rule for it, let's use can load. In case if some particular role that uses the component property, in that case, we use can activate, right? For Angular apps projects, is it necessary to create multiple folders to organize code files, components, modules, even for small projects? I hope it's more clear. Yeah, definitely it does make sense. So, um, as I mentioned at the very beginning, there is no run project structure. So what I presented today is how the majority of Angular projects look like. So I would say it's not necessary, but it's highly recommended that we'll have multiple folders for code structure creation. So we're separating all the files across, like we define the purpose of that file. Either it's a component or service, and depending on the purpose, we create a separate directory just to group everything together. And whenever you're looking, so let's say you want to inspect what is the welcome. So whenever you look at the app folder, you encounter, aha, we have core shared modules. Okay, that's clear. Then we have all the rest modules are the feature ones. Okay, we see that we have two feature modules called welcome and greeting. So in our case, it's 2 pages, but we can have nested routes inside all these two feature modules. Um, okay, and feature modules represents the functional area. Let's see, it could be the newsfeed or a user account or other functional area that is used. Okay, now I go into one of the particular modules. I expand the page. Okay, and I see this particular area consists of several pages. And now it's clear for me. Or either I could navigate right here to see the exact path that the welcome route has. And by organizing in such a way, it's more easier to navigate through the project structure because it's more obvious and it will be easier for newcomers to get started with it. And that's why it's highly recommended to have a well-organized project structure. Well, I believe for today that should be enough. In case if not, again, please let me know if you want to know or to implement something more. Okay, I will wait for maybe a minute or two for your questions or queries. Either you want to implement something else for today or you want me to explain something else. So please do not be silent. I'm waiting for a couple of minutes for your questions. Well, looks like nobody is asking, no more comments. But anyway, still, if you have something to ask or to ask in person, or you're waiting for answer from me, so ping me in Discord and I'll happy to help you. Since no other comments or requests, so I believe we're good to close today's workshop. So, and I just wanted to wish you The great evening, and thank you for your attention, and see you later.